Hi and welcome back. If you're new here, welcome in general. Thank you so much for clicking on my face today. My name is Eureka and I tell stories, mostly true crime, but sometimes also other things that my brain needs to rant or vent about. And now, as usual, before we start off today's story, we're gonna do the little disclaimer so that people know that I'm not a professional and that I don't mean any harm and stuff. So here that goes. This video is for storytelling and educational purposes only. Never do I mean any harm to the people I talk about, apart from sometimes the offenders, of course. Also, this video contains graphic descriptions of violence and also today's stories, especially very annoying sometimes. And so this might be triggering for some people, and so viewer discretion is advised. And also, if you stay until the end of this video, I will finally remove the bandana that is hiding the idiot-sized chunk of hair that I cut off a while ago. So yeah, really quality content here. Keep watching. All right, now let's get into... All right, now let's close the fucking door. Now our story today starts off in England with a girl called Catherine Ayling. Catherine was born in March of 1967 and she was the youngest of 5 siblings. She had an older brother named Chris and 3 older sisters named Sylvia, Angela and Teresa. The 5 children were all brought up by their father Bill, who after their parents had gotten a divorce way back, would take on the care of all of the children. Now, when our story starts, Catherine Ayling is 22 years old and she's studying humanities at a college in Cheshire. And over there, she was really enjoying being a student to the fullest. She was known as one of these people who just instantly made you feel better when you were around them, and her bubbly personality made that she had a lot of friends and people that liked her. The year when we start is 1988, when Catherine was 22 years old. It was April, so early springtime, and Catherine was on her way home from school, absolutely buzzing because she had just gotten some news from school that she couldn't wait to share with her dad. Catherine had just learned that together with 8 of her college friends, she was one of the few ones selected to go on a 16-week exchange student program to the United States of America. So absolutely buzzing. She gets home and she calls, Dad, 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 I need you to come down. Dad, I need to talk to you. And so she tells her dad about the program and if she please, can I go? And her dad laughed, but also was kind of worried instantly about his daughter going so far away for such a long time. But Catherine managed to convince him when she told him that they weren't going alone, they were going as a group, and she also promised him that they would stick together on campus all the time. And so a few months later, in August of that same year, 1988, Catherine was all packed up and ready, leaving for Gatwick Airport, where she would meet the rest of her friends. All excited, they flew to Boston, Massachusetts, and then were given a lift to Bridgewater College, where they would be studying for the next couple of months. And Catherine and her friends would soon settle into the American way of life. They would make new friends and they would go to bars and parties. And because Catherine had such an outgoing and friendly, open personality, quite quickly she would also catch the interest of the boys. Now, Catherine did go on a few dates, however, being very aware that she was leaving in a couple of months, every time she did date someone, she did say, I'm not looking for a relationship because I'm going to be leaving. So she made that very clear every time. And then during one of her classes, unbeknownst to her, Catherine had caught the eye of 25-year-old computer sciences student Curtis Howard. Curtis Howard was a 6'4", so 1.93 meters tall young man who had grown up in the lesser fortunate slum area of Boston. But despite his sort of poor upbringing, Curtis showed a lot of promise. He stuck in at school and he gained good exam results, and so he was let into Bridgewater College, just like Catherine. And over there, his friends would call him the popular whiz kid that had a lot of girls around him and kind of was perceived as a leader. And also Curtis was very active in the student government at Bridgewater College. And now to Curtis Howard, the moment that Catherine walked into his class, it felt a little bit like this. Now, Curtis was known as the gentle giant, and as soon as Catherine walked in, he asked her to go out on a date with him. Now, Catherine, who actually from the get-go wasn't really interested, politely refused, but Curtis wasn't having that. And so over the next few days or weeks, I'm not sure, Curtis just kept asking Catherine out. And every time, Catherine kept politely refusing. Curtis thought that he was being romantic and cute. Just like back in the day, we all thought that this was very romantic and cute.
I would really like to take you out.
Friend, do you mind?
Well, will you go out with me?
No!
Why not?
I don't know, because I don't want to.
I'm gonna ask you one more time. Will you? Or will you not go out with me?
Go out with him, honey.
Okay, fine. I'll go out with you.
No, don't do me any favors.
No, I want to.
You want it.
Yes!
You want it.
Say it.
I want to go out with you.
Say it again.
I want to go out with you!
All right, we'll go out.
Ugh. Still a fucking great film though. God, the tears that movie stole from me. So yeah, Catherine kept telling him no every time, but at some point he was pushing her so much that she almost felt like maybe her constant refusals could be perceived as a racial thing, but also she realised that she was leaving in a couple of months, and so maybe it couldn't hurt to just say yes, go on that date with him, because she'd be on a plane back to England far away from this little shitbag in a little while anyway. I just realised that he's actually very fucking tall, so maybe little shitbag isn't really the right choice of words. So let's go with big bag of shite. It's actually not funny, sorry. And so after weeks of asking her out, Catherine finally agreed, and she said, yes, fine, I'll go on a date with you. Now when the night of the date arrived, Catherine would find herself shooketh at what Curtis had arranged for her, because when she was standing outside of her dorm waiting for Curtis to come and get her, she saw a shiny white stretch limousine roll up to the car park. Curtis got out wearing a white tuxedo. He opened the car door for her, and the two drove to one of Boston's most famous waterfront restaurants. And over there, they would have quite a lovely meal. But even though Catherine was truly impressed with everything that Curtis had arranged and bought for her, all of this didn't make Catherine feel any different towards Curtis as a potential love interest. Because, you know, a love don't cost a thing, can buy me love. And so at the end of the night, when the limo brought the two back to Catherine's dorm, Curtis did walk out with Catherine to her front door. But after thanking him for a lovely night, she quickly walked up to her bedroom alone. And then early the next morning, when Catherine had just only barely woken up, the phone would ring. And it was Curtis, already asking her to go on another date with him. So Catherine was like, oh, red flag. And she immediately explained to Curtis that she really did have a lovely evening and she would like to be friends, but she really wasn't looking for a relationship right now, not with anyone. However, Curtis was not having that. Over the next few weeks, he kept ringing her, also asking her out in person every single time that she saw him. And every single time, Catherine again would have to politely refuse, which obviously was very annoying. And slowly but steadily, Catherine would start to realize how big of an obsession Curtis had developed with her. And the thing is, they only had home phones at the time, so obviously she didn't want to pick up, but you never knew if it was actually Curtis or someone else because they didn't have a display. So most of the time she was actually picking up the phone, realizing it's Curtis again, and then once again having to tell him off. So he really was making his problem her problem. And yeah, don't fucking do that. Curtis even started to get more and more rude, or less polished, if you will, because at some point there was a school trip to Montreal in Canada, and Catherine would find herself terrified when she figured out who she was placed into a room with. It was Curtis. And the second that she walked into that room and saw Curtis, he started pestering her to come sleep in his bed with him. Now, Catherine was having absolutely none of this, and she immediately walked off to the college staff and asked to be reassigned. And luckily, this was possible, because imagine how that night would have been. Like, I need my sleep. Don't ruin my sleep with your shit. it really sucks to say this, but I think most women, men also, like a lot of people in this world have experienced someone who does this sort of thing, like pressuring you into like, is that also gaslighting? I think so. I'm not sure. It's just very annoying. And I think during this story, personally, I got a lot of, you know? And thinking back of moments when I had that with people, and you're like, but we've all grown up, so I'm sure they've grown into good people. Let's hope so. But yeah, luckily Catherine was able to be reassigned to another room. And the next morning, Curtis did come to Catherine apologizing for his behavior and saying, hey, can we maybe just be friends then? And Catherine, remembering that she was leaving in a little bit, said, okay, yes, fine, we'll be friends. And hopefully she would be done with him by now. But then, only a few days after the school trip to Canada, Catherine would get some really dreadful news. Her father, Bill, whom she was very close with, had passed away from a heart attack, and she had to go back to the UK immediately. Actually, so quickly that she didn't even have time to say goodbye to her college friends. She just had to run to her dorm, grab her stuff, get on a plane, and leave. Now, back in England, Catherine would move in with her sister Sylvia, who was 28 years old and lived in the village of Wick in Littlehampton, about 60 miles or 96.5 kilometres southwest of London. And then, after a few weeks of being back in the UK and mourning her father with her family, Catherine would start to receive letters and phone calls from Curtis, who was over 4,000 miles away, which is 6,437 kilometers. It was unclear how Curtis had managed to get a hold of Catherine's phone number, but once again, Curtis was phoning Catherine's house every single day and night. Now, Catherine really tried to live a normal life, but because Curtis was calling so often, her family and people close to her were also really getting aware of this Curtis dude who was phoning their house all the time and would also quickly start to become very annoyed. After a while, Catherine would go back to her old college in Cheshire, Crewe and Orsaga College, to finish her studies because she had decided that her passion lied in becoming a teacher after she graduated. Still, Curtis was bombarding her family with phone calls and letters declaring his love for her, saying that she would be his one day. Like, really, Curtis? Please kindly fuck off. Then a brand new $200 leather jacket would arrive in the mail, and more letters and phone calls would come. And Catherine, who to me seemed like sort of the most patient person in the world that I've ever heard about, by now was starting to get really pissed the fuck off. And so she decided it had to be over. She had to really tell him off. And so during one of their phone calls, Catherine told Curtis that she liked him as a friend, but that there was no way that she would ever in her life engage in a romantic relationship with him, ever. Sorry, I feel like I'm way too white to do that clappy thing. So hanging up the phone, Catherine let out a sigh, feeling so relieved that she had finally done the thing that she had been putting off for so long, telling him to fuck off. And sure enough, the letters and the phone calls finally did stop. However, only after a month or so, it would all start again. But this time, it would be different. In the letters that would now come, there were no mentions anymore of love and sweet talk. Now they were filled with threats and hateful comments. Now, Catherine's sister Sylvia by now was also really done with Curtis. And so she went to their phone company asking if there was anything that they could do. And so they could block the number for her, which was really nice. But that didn't stop the letters from coming, obviously. And then, one hot summer evening in late June of 1990, Sylvia, so Catherine's sister, is on her way home from work when she finds her house has been broken into. The first thing she sees is that nothing really is stolen, but when she gets to Catherine's room, it is completely trashed. Her mattress and her pillow had been slashed, and on the pillow there was a note left saying, "Catherine Ayling, burn in hell," On the wooden door of the bedroom, someone had carved the words, "Catherine is dead," with a reversed swastika sign, which I don't think was reversed on purpose. I don't think that was done intentionally. And now not only that, but they would also come to find out that the grave of her father, Bill, had been vandalized. So absolute dick move. So Sylvia immediately phoned the police and told them about the situation with this Curtis Howard, because even though he was supposed to be 4,000 miles away from Wick and Littlehampton and Catherine and her family, Sylvia was 100% sure that Curtis had to be somewhere over here in the UK stalking her little sister. So she informed the police about the phone calls and the letters and the leather jacket and the burglary and the pillow smashing and the creepy notes. And luckily, the police immediately got on it. When the police interviewed the neighbours, one of them would say that they had seen a man fitting Curtis's description hanging around a few times at the local pub where Catherine sometimes worked at. So yes, Curtis fucking Howard had indeed made his way to the UK. And Catherine obviously was terrified. And so she made arrangements with some friends to stay over at their place until Curtis had been found. It actually wouldn't take long to find him. Sylvia's boyfriend, Paddy, was driving along a roadside near their house when he saw Curtis walking along that roadside. And so he immediately called the police. They get there, they arrest Curtis, and they take him to Arundel police station. And there, when they were searching him, in his pockets, they would find Catherine's checkbook and check guarantee card. So he had taken them from Sylvia's house. Curtis remained in custody until 10 days later his court hearing would be held, where he was found guilty of burglary and the court would give him a 2-year suspended jail sentence. And so the next day, Curtis was escorted back to Gatwick Airport, where his passport got a stamp and a mark saying that he would never be allowed to enter the UK ever again, and why. So this was some really good news for Catherine, because that meant that at least in the UK, she was safe. Finally, Catherine's nightmare was over, and she would be able to study on her finals again, which were going on at the time. And so she continued studying, spending most of her free time in the college library. Because as you know, there was no Google, so the library was your best friend. And actually, I really don't want to sound like a naive, oblivious youngster here, but whenever I don't have my smartphone with me for a few days, for reasons sometimes, the thing I miss the most is being able to Google things. Not necessarily directions, well, also, yes, directions, but mainly because my brain just sort of throws these stoner life questions at me all day. And then, being able to just beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, and have the answer ready is something that gives me a lot of serotonin. So yeah, that's something that I really love about the modern day is Google and the availability of information. And so Catherine was studying hard. However, for very obvious reasons, she was experiencing a lot of anxiety about what had happened, and sometimes she would even have panic attacks when she saw a person that even slightly resembled the looks of Curtis. And luckily she had a group of great friends with her who would, calm her down, give her a hug, and remind her that Curtis was not allowed back in the UK. So even if he would start sending letters again or anything, in the UK, you are safe. He is not allowed in. But Catherine really found it hard to deal with, and one time even thought she saw Curtis walking around the premises of the school, and she got her friends and one of the teachers actually to roam the entire premises with her to see if Curtis was actually there. And of course he wasn't, so her friends once again were calming her down, saying, hey, you're gonna be okay. It's okay, we're with you, and Curtis is far away, not allowed to cross the border into this country. You're gonna be okay. Then on the 29th of May, the year is now 1991, and Catherine is 24 years old. And somewhere in the middle of the day, Sylvia, Catherine's sister, would get a phone call from the professors at the Crewe College that Catherine hadn't showed up to any of their classes today, and also that her friends hadn't seen her anywhere around all day since that morning. Then, a few hours after that, the police got a phone call saying that a car resembling Catherine's vehicle was found on the college parking lot, abandoned and with a flat tire. And to their concern, when the police start searching the car, they would find the seat covers covered in blood. Now, going back in time a little bit to a year earlier, when a very annoyed Curtis Howard was arriving back in America and was not planning on giving up on Catherine, even though she was once again out of his reach, 4,000 miles away with an ocean between them. All he could think about was her, and especially his revenge on her. If you could see how she's looking at me right now, she's so done with me. Sorry, I once again leave you hanging on a cliffhanger. His obsession for Catherine just kept on spiraling, and with that, his motivation to actually get back at her was growing day by day. He needed to see her. The first plan he came up with to go back to the UK was to come up with a fake passport using the identity of a 9-year-old deceased boy who had never actually had a passport. And I'm not quite sure how that would work, but also it didn't work because an alert passport office worker person noticed the discrepancies and immediately called the FBI. Curtis was tracked down and police came to his house and they asked him about it, and Curtis immediately admitted to the deception. And so in honor of their job and protecting the people, the police did the right thing. They gave him a warning. Obviously, this didn't set Curtis back at all, and so he immediately got on to working on his next plan. This plan involved persuading a friend named Dwayne Williams to have his picture taken wearing Curtis's glasses and then go apply for a passport. And this time, it worked. Dwayne actually succeeded. And so, with a brand new fake passport and no facial recognition devices at the airports yet, nothing was now stopping Curtis Howard from returning to the UK. And so, in May of 1991, Curtis Howard, posing as Dwayne Williams, made his way to the check-in desks at Boston Airport. He was a bit nervous about his plan, but he had thought it through so many times, and he knew that his photo really looked like it could be him. And also, he really needed to see Catherine. There was no other way. He needed to get on that plane. And so Curtis gave his fake passport to the Border Patrol officer, who looked at it for a bit and then looked back at Curtis, look back at the passport, stamp it, and wish him a pleasant journey. And so, his posture confident and tall, Curtis Howard took back his passport, he received his boarding pass, he took his carry-on luggage, and he passed the security lines of Boston Airport. It worked. He was going to England. I bet he had himself some annoying villainy giggle in the bathroom of the airplane. Now, when he arrived in the UK, he checked into a hotel and immediately got on to contacting a private investigator service. I'm not sure if he already knew a contact or how he went about that, but he offered a man £500 in order to give him Catherine's address, which is so not okay. Like, don't just give a random guy that asks for a girl's, or anyone really, like not gender or age or whatever related, don't give random people someone else's address when you don't know what their intentions are. Like, you're a PI, why would you give a random guy this young girl's address? Especially like the place where she feels most safe as well. But then again, maybe Curtis was very convincing because I don't know what he said. Maybe he said he wanted to surprise a friend or whatever. But still, you know. Now, when Curtis got the information of Catherine's whereabouts, he hired a car and immediately drove to Monmouth College in Cheshire. He would arrive there the next day, and from then on, he would go on to stalk Catherine for about a week or so. And that meant that when Catherine had thought she had seen Curtis walking around the school grounds and had gotten a professor and her friends to look around the entire area for her, she was actually completely right. Now, one of his days wandering around the college campus, Curtis actually bumped into a friend of Catherine's. And not only that, but one of the friends that had actually been with her on the United States exchange thing. So this friend would definitely recognize Curtis and relay that back to Catherine. So Curtis was really scared, but by complete fucking stupid coincidence. This particular friend had never met Curtis and didn't know what he looked like. And so Catherine's very good friend didn't say anything to her because she just didn't even notice him. Curtis would continue to stalk Catherine around the campus for a little under a week. Until then, on that particular Wednesday, the 29th of May in 1991, Catherine was walking out of her college with her arms full of books, returning to her car in the parking lot. Little did she know that Curtis had slashed one of her tires so she wouldn't be able to get away, and was now lurking in the car next to hers with the windows blacked out so she wouldn't be able to see him, waiting for just the right moment to execute his master plan. When the police spoke to Catherine's family about her missing persons case, they immediately pointed towards Curtis Howard again, because for some reason they just knew, they had a gut feeling Curtis had something to do with it again. And of course, they were right. So the police immediately arranged for checks to be made at Gatwick Airport, and this included checking passenger lists and immigration records, but obviously the police didn't know that Curtis had used the identity of Dwayne Williams, so they wouldn't even find him on there. Then they went on to check car hiring companies, and through this, after 2 days, they were able to locate the car that Curtis had hired. The car was found left and abandoned at the long-stay car park at Gatwick Airport, and inside the boot of the car, they found Catherine's lifeless body. The second Catherine had opened her car door, Curtis had jumped on her and attacked her with a knife. And this is really sad, so if you get sad easily, then maybe this is a moment to skip for a bit. I do bloopers at the end sometimes, so... At the same time, a few people that were near the crew in Osage College would all of a sudden look up when they heard what sounded like a woman screaming. And they looked at each other and shrugged, thinking it was just some lovers' quarrel. A coroner was able to figure out that then Catherine had really fought hard to fight off her attacker, but that in the end, Curtis ended up stabbing her 10 times before he would slash her throat. Then, when she was deceased, he put her in the boot of the car, left her car parked at the parking lot there, and he drove to Gatwick Airport. There, he parked the car in the long-stay parking lot, and then just left the car with Catherine still in the boot of the trunk. Infuriatingly, only a few hours after Catherine had walked outside of the college with her arms full of books, Curtis would be high up in the sky, long on his way back to America. After they found Catherine's body, the UK police immediately phoned the FBI, asking them to go to Curtis's house and arrest him on the spot. And the FBI immediately act on it, so they go to Curtis's house, but Curtis was nowhere to be found, not even in the places that he was known to be seen. Then finally, a few days later, the FBI got a break when an unexpected caller called in to say that he had been contacted by Curtis Howard. Now, this student counselor, a man named Dr. Kirk Avery... Hi. Oh, oh, that's just lovely. You're delicious. I'm sorry. Beep, 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 beep. Thank you. This professor, a man named Dr. Kirk Avery, told the police that he had been contacted by Curtis, calling him up all in a tizzy, frantically saying, "I killed Kathy, she died in my arms." And so the police asked him if he would be okay with setting up a meeting with Curtis to maybe talk about it so that police could arrest him. And Dr. Kirk Avery agrees, and so he calls up Curtis, who also agrees to the plan, not the arresting part. And so when the day of the meeting arrived, Curtis would show up at Dr. Kirk Avery's house, where the FBI were waiting, ready to arrest him. Now, when they searched Curtis's apartment, they would find a ripped-up letter that he had written, supposedly to a friend. We don't know what friend, maybe it was to himself. But this letter read the following: "My friend, I have done something terribly wrong. Something I never thought in my wildest dreams, in my angriest moments. My God, what have I become? I committed an unforgivable and unspeakable act. I took the life of a person who never hated me, a person who never at any time sought to hurt me in any way, a person whose life was twice as meaningful, if not more, than mine. My friend, I killed Catherine. I know it sounds unbelievable, for even now, 24 hours after it happened, I can't believe it. It wasn't until I held her in my arms and she called out my name and she said she was cold that I realized it was Catherine I had killed." Now, Curtis would fight extradition really hard, but eventually he was extradited back to England to go before Hove Crown Courts on the 5th of July 1994. In there, Curtis would actually plead not guilty to murder, but guilty to manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. And because of this, the judge postponed the trial until a few doctors would be able to look at Curtis. His sentencing would finally take place at the Old Bailey in London on the 26th of October in that same year, 1994. The doctors that examined him said that he suffered from paranoid psychosis and severe psychotic illness, which would have led to all these severe delusions and obsessions. Curtis was then sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 7 years. And after the verdict was read, the judge would also read a statement saying the following: "You are a cunning, devious, violent, and dangerous man who clearly became obsessed with Catherine. Even after her death, I find it necessary to protect the public and her family from you. I believe you are a potential danger for a long and uncertain period of time." As Curtis was led away, Catherine's sister Sylvia would shout, "Burn in hell." The other sister, Teresa, also said that never in a million years should this man be allowed to walk free ever again. Just lock him up and throw away the key. Curtis's own mother, Barbara, bless her, she would say that she had never heard Curtis talk of any Catherine Ayling, and that she would see her son as a very smart and quiet and overall just a high-achieving boy. But with Curtis going to jail, the story wasn't entirely over, because when people started looking into Curtis more thoroughly and into his background, it turned out that, shockingly, this wasn't the first time he had been obsessing over a girl. A while back, at his church, he had met a girl called Linda, who had moved there from the Bermuda Islands, and Curtis immediately took a liking to her. But just like Catherine, she had politely refused his avances, and Curtis was not having that. And so, of course, completely following his MO, Curtis would start bombarding her with phone calls and letters. One time, he actually broke into her dormitory, and then later, when she was out with a couple of friends, he was dressed up all in black, jumped out at her from the bushes, and slashed her face with a razor. Now, Linda did go to the police to report the incident. However, she was so traumatized by what had happened and so done with Curtis as well, that she just moved away and dropped all charges, and also made sure that Curtis wouldn't be able to find her, because she felt like she would not be able to face him in a courtroom. So, Curtis! Because police also discovered another incident where a girl had turned him down, to which Curtis had replied with repeatedly stabbing himself in the stomach. Interesting technique, I guess. And this landed him in the hospital with severe internal bleeding and wounds. Furthermore, it would show on Curtis's record that he had been arrested quite a few times, of which for armed robbery, possession of ammunition, car theft, and twice for trespassing a female dormitory. So yeah, just so many red flags and such a pattern, and it's just so frustrating that no one was able to do anything about it. But then again, yeah, he just slipped through the cracks. And actually, he would continue to do so, because infuriatingly, in 2001, so only 7 years after his jail sentence, Curtis managed to convince a parole board at his prison in Cambridgeshire that he was no longer a threat to society. He walked free from Whitmore or Whitemore jail in Cambridgeshire on the 28th of November in 2001. And then the following February 4th in 2002 would be deported back to the United States of America, all free to go. Catherine's family obviously was furious at this, and especially because they had known that he would be up for parole, but they only found out that he had gotten his parole on the day that he actually got out, when it was on the news. So this was very painful for them. And they would say that we certainly don't think that the time he has served reflects the severity of the crime. He should have served the full sentence. We are all very unhappy about it, as you can imagine, and we're not sure what to do. The problem is that American authorities, or I think also vice versa, have no obligation at all to look after prisoners that were released on British grounds or from British jails. So when Curtis was deported back to America, he didn't even have like a parole officer to keep him in check. And so Curtis was just walking free. And unfortunately, that was all I've been able to find on Curtis's whereabouts. So as far as we know, Curtis is still out there, maybe obsessing over girls. Obviously, once again, let me say that even though I joke about, the perpetrators and their stupid decisions, but I do want to emphasize that what happened to Catherine's family and also Curtis's family was absolutely awful, should not be joked about, and my thoughts do go out to them, and I hope that they're okay nowadays. So yeah, that's the story on Catherine Ayling for now. Let me know in the comments what you thought. But before I leave, I still have to do something that I promised, which is remove the bandana. Yay, so exciting. But before I do, I really want to say something, okay? So hear me out. I'm not doing a sponsorship or anything right now. I just need to say something to you. When I remove this and you see the idiot-sized chunk of hair that has been removed, don't think of me as a different person and that I have a brain that is actually quite smart, and also that I'm quite good at cutting hair, but just not when I zone out. And I know you might be thinking, stop being an annoying influencer that when she's going to show it, she's going to be all like, oh, but it's not actually that bad and we can all go on with our lives. But trust me, it's really bad. So yeah, just remember that I'm the same person who should not be judged on her stupid actions. Please. Because, yes, for those of you that don't know, I have raging ADD, and so I zone out into outer space every now and then, which I can best describe as a laptop with a virus that just goes into sleep mode way too quickly, and I have no control over that. So I could be doing something and then all of a sudden just go, and then after a bit I sort of wake up. You can check out my fail files video if you would like, because there's a lot of that stuff in there, like burnt dishes and stuff. Once again, this channel is not called ADHDumpsterfire for no reason, for nothing. Alright, so let's get this trash party going then. If you want to say, why did you do that? I don't know, I didn't do it on purpose. I will talk about it in a bit, but oh crap, the owner of my dog is coming back, so hold on. Hi, welcome to my house where it's very loud, noisy, and there's a baby crying outside. But yeah, you still needed to see the hair. So it's now the next morning. This is my morning hair, a bit fluffed down because it was like way up. And then like this is the situation here, which is getting somewhere. But then we turn our head to the left. Yeah. But you know, it'll grow. See, this stupid thing is why I wear the fucking bandana. So sorry for the noise. But yeah, it's kind of like when you're doing eyeliner and you zoom in too much on one eye and then you've perfected it and then you zoom out and the total picture looks absolutely awful. So you zoom in on the other eye again and then you're in for a downward spiral of regrets and mistakes. So I kind of went like that, but with hair. And I actually have a rule. I now actually have a rule that I'm not allowed to look in the mirror, because when I do, I just can't help but zone out and I have no control over it, and then end up squeezing a lot of pimples that don't exist. And also sometimes cutting my hair. So yeah, not allowed to look in the mirror. So I looked in the mirror, right? Just after I filmed last week's video when I said, oh, I cut it short, it went bad. That was just this situation. I didn't even know what was in for me. I actually looked at myself like in the eyes in the mirror and I said, we're not gonna fuck it up. We're not gonna zone out. We're only gonna cut that little strand of hair that was actually out of place, by the way. So I lost focus. And then when I sort of woke up, I noticed that I was angling the scissors wrong. That was great. Thank you so much for hanging with me, and if it was your first time here, I hope you liked it. And if you did like it, there's more where this came from on my channel, so feel free to go on a binge if you know you're up for it. And then one could possibly subscribe, but we don't do mandatory things here, so you do you and stuff. I just hope you have a good day. So please give yourself a big kiss in the mirror from me. Also, please tell the ones that you love them. And hopefully I'll see you next week. Bye! Obviously. But yeah, luckily Karen, name's not Karen. Back in England, who would managed to get Karen. It was unclear how. After a few weeks, Catherine so still.